I'm Pat McGovern. I'm a member of the investment team here at Bowery Capital. We're an early stage B2B software fund. We lead seed and pre-seed rounds in a range of vertical and horizontal companies that are building software at the application and infrastructure layer. Here at Bowery, I personally spend most of my time on vertical software, and we're kind of seeing this evolution from the vertical software we saw being built in, say, 2015 to 2020 to what's now being built as vertical AI. So for those that don't know, vertical software is software that's focused on a particular industry, right? So Procore for construction, Toast for restaurants. There's been many of these companies built and funded over the last, call it 5-10 years. But now with the advent of generative AI, AI agents, you're seeing a whole new wave of these companies that instead of just simply organizing the work in the way vertical software historically has, where they basically provide you with some kind of web-based interface to organize your business. So be it book customers, bill customers, do basic marketing, manage your inventory, but someone still had to drive that software. It was basically an organizational tool. Now you're seeing these vertical AI companies that can organize the business's workflows and then execute on a bunch of them, right? So it can actually take on pieces of jobs that were previously being done by staff members at these companies. And that's kind of an interesting evolution. I think it's a whole second act for vertical software. I think it also can drive much higher contract values, make these much more meaningful and impactful businesses. So that's where I spend most of my time, is trying to find interesting founders building in compelling industries that are building some form of vertical AI that can use AI as a wedge to build a new wave of systems of record. As we've been doing more research on industries that are ripe for the application of vertical AI, there's 4 that we've identified that we're really digging in on. So that'd be healthcare, energy, financial services, and transportation. We think they all have a very large kind of back office administrative burden that AI would be effective in taking on as an entry point to build a modern system of record in any of those categories. So one where you've already seen a lot of vertical AI investments be made by different funds is healthcare. So healthcare, if you've ever been to the doctor, there's the dance between the doctor and the insurer involves extensive paperwork. So if you're a doctor who's trying to get a procedure authorized, file a prior authorization claim with an insurance carrier, you're trying to operate under a value-based care regime where you have to provide a tremendous amount of documentation to an insurer to get reimbursed. Right now this is done by third-party consultancies that can augment some of this. Sometimes there's kind of back office billing and insurance and claims folks, but a lot of this work is very process-oriented, very repetitive, very kind of match document A to document B. These are all things that current AI capabilities are pretty good at. So we see building a tool that can manage some of those back office tasks as an entry point into healthcare to build a modern system of record. So I think Epic's probably the most successful healthcare EHR of the last 20 years. The next Epic will be built starting off by using AI to automate some of this back office stuff and then building off of that. And you can kind of tack on modules that slowly get more customer facing and kind of seep into other parts of the business. Also, by being in the back office, you're having a tremendous amount of data you can use to train your AI models on if you have proprietary models at your company. And you kind of have this very unique insight into what's going on in the wider operation. And that's in healthcare or really any other industry where you use this back office wedge as a platform to deploy vertical AI. Energy is another industry where there's a tremendous amount of regulatory reporting burden. So most of these back office functions are driven by some kind of regulatory requirement or counterparty requirement in the case of healthcare and insurers. So if you're running a nuclear plant or a wind farm, a brown power plant, you have to report to the EPA and the NERC and all these kind of 3-4 letter government agencies and file extensive permits and reports around your operations, your environmental impact, and so on. A lot of that stuff, again, is very templatized, very kind of formulaic, things that AI can execute on effectively today. So we see software companies being built to solve that kind of administrative burden problem as a wedge into building a wider AI command and control platform for an energy operation. We actually have a company called Clear that's kind of done a version of this for water utilities, where they started with regulatory compliance reporting, and now they're building into a wider ERP for water. And we think a similar playbook in energy is an interesting one, and we've been actively looking for opportunities there. Number 3 would be transportation. So again, if you're operating a railroad, an airline, a large trucking carrier, you are subject to extensive government reporting and documentation. So for instance, if you run an airline, the FAA makes you file pre-trip reports, post-trip reports, incident reports. We think if someone were to build software using AI to automate a lot of that, it gives you a very rich data set that you can then build on and start automating things that are currently done by in-house staff at these airlines, things like maintenance scheduling, route planning, pre-planned fuel purchases, et cetera. So again, it's kind of a way to get in these businesses, also to build trust with these enterprises, which generally aren't going to let you take on the highest value tasks first and get access to data that will help you build your product and kind of outcompete other folks going after the same buyer type. Another area we're excited about is financial services. The term back office kind of originates on Wall Street and in the financial sector. We see a lot of opportunities there to use AI to automate some of the compliance and reporting requirements that are currently done by kind of very large teams of fairly expensive staff. One concrete example is suspicious activity reports. So if you are a bank and someone deposits an unusual amount of cash into their account, you have to basically write a few-page memo summarizing what happened. This goes to the Treasury, and they can use this to source leads for financial investigations. Today that's done by expensive consultants, large in-house teams. We think a lot of that work can be augmented through AI. So you could have start with drafting SARs for a bank, then you start creeping into the wider compliance stack, and then you kind of have full visibility into the institution's operations to build out further modules from there. So again, financial institutions, another area we're really excited about. Back office as a wedge to full AI platform. So I think there's no doubt that AI is coming to the mid-market, the enterprise. These tools are going to be adopted. So the question is kind of how do they initially enter this buyer persona? And I think it's through back office focused solutions, because one, it's what AI is good at with the current kind of capabilities. Two, these areas are cost centers where the KPIs executives are benchmarked on are always about reducing cost on these functions that are non-revenue generating. So maybe a little more willing to experiment with cutting edge technologies if it can reach that higher goal of saving money. I think also these are generally viewed as somewhat lower value tasks within these institutions. So there's less emphasis on them being absolutely perfect. So again, higher degree of willingness to experiment. A lot of these are functions that have to happen for various regulatory reasons. So they're going to be done. So the executive's mandate is kind of how can you do them in the most efficient way. And then also you get a great amount of data and insight into what's going on in these organizations with which you can build a true system of record. So I think, we're really looking at companies that are solving existing back office problems using AI agents and viewing that as the wedge in how you can build kind of the next generation of vertical software. And that's how we think it's going to start being adopted and obviously, grow from there over time.